I suppose you would expect an academic to be an author and possibly an activist. However, I'm not sure if you'd for one moment expect that that person would deliberately cross from one country to another without the requisite papers. Then again, one would have to possess a certain daring to tackle a PhD while raising 3 young children. You are about to begin a journey with the head of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies Regional Coordinating Office, Professor Opal Palmer Adisa. This is Profile. I am Faye Ellington. Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, I've just exposed you. Now the Chancellor knows, the Vice Chancellor knows, the Principal knows, and I don't know if you now have a job.
I don't know either.
What is this about moving from one country to another without the papers that you require?
Well, it's not the first time I've done it, but certainly the first time I did it was when I went to Ghana. And Ghana and Togo are neighbors, and they're divided between the British and the English. And my friends I was staying with in Ghana said they're going to Togo, and I thought, well, I want to go. They say, well, you need visas and all this stuff. But they say, you know, well, we wade through the sea because we have relatives there. So I thought, well, why not? So they dressed me up so I look like them, and they said, if we get stopped by the guards, just pretend you're dumb. We'll tell them you're dumb, and, you know, that will be that. So we drove to the border, and then we waded through for about, it's a short distance, about 20 minutes, half an hour through the sea, and we were in Togo. And I had a lovely time, and nobody stopped me.
And your return journey?
The same way.
You are brave. And you said you did that more than once. Where did you do this
Well,
again?
I didn't wade through the sea but once. I mean, but when I was in Kenya, I realized, too, that it was 5 hours to the border to Tanzania. And so I thought, well, Jomo Kenyatta and, you know, and Nyerere were all my heroes. So I figured, let me go to Tanzania and see if I could go to Kilimanjaro. And so I went. Now, I was lucky there, because I went and I was stopped by the guard because I was in a car with other Kenyans. And I said, I don't have any visa. He says, you can't come in then. But I was on TV the night before on my work, and the other guard says, oh, that's that Jamaican woman who we on TV, you could let her through.
Jamaica again.
Jamaica again.
Passport to the world.
Absolutely. And so I got a chance to spend 3 days in Tanzania.
And did you see Kilimanjaro?
Well, you know, I saw the top of Kilimanjaro, the base of Kilimanjaro. It was very cold, July, and I didn't have the right gear or clothes, and it didn't...
What were you doing on the continent of Africa at that time?
I was just exploring. I'd always wanted to go.
Not studying or anything?
No, I had always wanted to go, and I had an opportunity to I had 8 weeks vacation, and I figured I made contact in Ghana, and I made contact in Kenya, and I had a cousin who was married to a Nigerian, and so I decided I would spend my time these 8 weeks going from one place to the next.
And it's stories are made of exciting,
absolutely,
you know, journeys like that one. Let's bring you back to Jamaica. You were a graduate of Woolman's School for Girls.
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up primarily at Caymanas Estate, certainly since I was 4 and a half or 5, almost 5. So I grew up at Caymanas Estate, and that's where I lived until I left when I was 16. I didn't finish Woolman's. My mother had decided that my brother, who was older, had already and was working at on TV, JBC, and my sister...
Which brother is this?
Stratton Palmer.
Okay, Stratton. Yes.
And my sister was finishing up her O-levels. We're still O-levels then at St. Andrews, and I was the baby. And so my mother had gone up the year before, and, you know, so
prepared to have you all there. But what are your fondest memories of living at Caymanas Estate?
The immense space. And I remember as children we would play ring games. You know, we had a big lawn in front of our house, and so kids would gather there. And I remember Sunday walks. We would walk 2-3 miles between the cane fields. You know, there were cane fields on both sides. And then coming back in the evenings when it was dark, I just remember that just as being amazingly fun and telling stories. So I think those are some of my
No wonder you're a
memories.
storyteller.
Yes.
That you write these stories and you, in so many different ways, through books and plays, etc. But now let's go back to New York. You landed in New York when you were about 16. What was that experience like?
Traumatic.
Why?
Well, you know, you hear so much about the U.S. and you go and it's nothing, certainly it was not like anything that I had expected. It was cold. We got there in April and it was snowing. And it was very impersonal. You know, imagine coming from Jamaica, but coming from Caymanas Estate, where everybody knew us, and you land in a place where nobody knows you, and everybody thinks you're talking funny. And believe it or not, the white kids at the school had no notion about Jamaica. I remember I had a friend from Africa, I think he was from Kenya, and they thought we lived in coconut trees. You know, I mean,
And how did you dispel that myth?
I don't know if I did because I thought it was absurd. I know my friend from Africa didn't dispel that myth. They all thought that he rode on an elephant to school. I mean, so this was a kind of ignorance there. So you were always, and you know, they thought everybody smoked and laid back on the beach. You know, where's your spliff kind of thing. So it was just, I found it to be a very unfriendly environment, an overwhelming environment. I have to tell you, my first day at Hunter College, I got lost because, you know, it's a campus on 4 blocks and you could enter from one if you enter on Park Street or whatever. And I was totally lost and overwhelmed. I mean, I remember finding a corner and crying and thinking, this is too much.
What did you go to Hunter College to study?
Initially, I went to be a mathematician because I was good in math, believe it or not. And then I did Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 just threw me off. And then I decided no. And so I ended up doing educational media communications.
That's interesting because I believe you came back and worked at the Educational Broadcasting
Yes,
Service
I
here in
did.
Jamaica
Absolutely.
for some time.
Yes, for 3 years.
So that was Hunter College, but you moved on to a master's and you moved on to PhD. What were you pursuing at that time?
So when I came back home, it was to stay, at least so I thought. And then I wanted to do a master's in creative writing because I was being published in the Gleaner every Sunday. Mervyn Morris and Kamau Brathwaite had a poetry section. And so I knew at that time that I wanted to write and I wanted to study formally. And the university didn't have a MA.
The University of the West Indies.
University of the West Indies didn't have an MA in creative writing. And so I was looking around about where am I going to go. I didn't want to go back to New York because I never liked it. And a Jamaican friend had returned just shortly and said, you should go to California. Education is very affordable there and they have really great creative writing programs. And when I checked it out, San Francisco State was very affordable and they had an incredible MF in creative writing, so I decided that's where I was going to go.
And you also did your PhD while in California.
Well, that was not my intention. Things kind of happen, you know. So when I finished my master's degree, I remember saying to myself, I'm going to get a job and save so I can come back and buy a car.
Come back to Jamaica.
Come back to Jamaica and buy a car. So I thought, well, I'll work for 2 years and that would happen. But then when I finished my master's degree, I got a job at San Francisco State in the Black Studies department, quite accidentally. Angela Davis, who was teaching there, had broken her something.
This is Angela Davis from the 60s?
This is Angela Davis.
This is the Black Power Angela Davis?
This is the Black Power Angela Davis.
That you worked with?
That I had shared an office with, yes. And so something happened, she broke something, and so the dean said to me, can I teach her class? I had no idea what I was doing, but I said yes. And so my first job at the college level was teaching Angela Davis' class. I was hired as a part-timer. And it was the hardest I worked because she had an established syllabus and, you know, our classes were like
established
75
persona.
students.
That's,
exactly.
You know, could we take a break and we hear more about that
Okay.
and how the PhD program went and what you did in fact study? What a fascinating story so far. Opal, Palmer, Adisa.
Adisa.
Yeah, here she is. We'll be right back.